And we are live. Welcome to the Political Orphans. My name is Nico and I am your in-house conservative. To my left, Rob Ambrose, our token liberal. Our goal is simple. We want to show you that it's possible for a lefty and a righty to not only get along, but to be able to have a civil conversation when we disagree. Because never forget, common sense has no political affiliations. Today on the show, we are talking about what is trending, obviously. But what's the number one story of the day? Turns out that CBC anchor is claiming that he was silenced and forced to resign. You're going to have to watch the show to figure out why. Carney has mandated his ministers to reduce program spending by 7.5% in the fiscal year starting on April 16, 2026. He also announced yesterday that we need to do more to fight Islamophobia. We also need to address Epstein and the diddler. We haven't had the time to do it, but we're doing it today. And finally, digital IDs are coming. They're being discussed in Australia, they're being discussed in the UK and the US, and yes, Canada is also talking about it. Get your comments ready because the show starts now. Here we go. What's going on, man?
What's going on, brother?
Not bad for a sick bastard.
Yeah. You're sick, eh? Yeah, no, I like the intro. It's a nice tease. You gotta watch the show if you want to find out why.
Gently fondling our listeners' balls.
Exactly. Yes, gently. Cheryl. We're fondling Cheryl's balls here. Hey, Cheryl, how's it going? As well as wise guys. Everyone's balls. Well, everyone's balls.
I guess we're all about getting sued for sexual harassment too.
Metaphorical balls, not actual balls.
Yeah, they're not real. Obvious. Well, who are you to say that she does not have?
Well, bold of me to assume her gender, of course.
Yeah. That's a great way to start the show. Sorry if you're brand new to this. We don't normally do this, but hey.
Well, to be fair, we usually do something like this.
We do indeed. That we do. Yes. So, what's going on, Cheryl? What's going on, wise guy?
Yes, guys. How's it going?
I don't know. We'll go right into it. And you know what? I have two questions for you guys, but I think I'm going to change my question because I was going to ask you guys if you believe that digital IDs were a good thing. But you know what? I'm going to scratch that question. And the question I'm going to ask you guys instead is, are you really surprised that there's a CBC host that's claiming that he's being canned, that he's been fired, or he's been forced to resign because he was getting silenced? Like, are you guys that surprised that somebody at CBC is not allowed to talk about what he wants to talk about?
No, that's not surprising at all. To be honest, it's kind of surprising that someone would do what he did, just because the reason why more people don't speak out is because those are cushy jobs, right? They pay you pretty good money, and he's been on leave for several months. That was the thing, is they put him on medical leave because he's crazy. Apparently, he's crazy because he doesn't parrot to the left-wing narrative. What's that?
He does not want to walk the line.
Yeah, exactly, right. It couldn't just be that he's like a conservative or has different opinion. He's crazy, so he's on stress leave and medical leave. So you're still getting paid when you're on that. And he's been off away for months, just collecting a salary, not doing anything. And there's a lot of people who would be like, you know what, that's a pretty sweet gig. I'm just gonna stay here, collect my paycheck, keep my mouth shut, and that's exactly what they want, right? It's essentially like an unofficial NDA or non-disclosure agreement. They put you on medical leave, make sure that you get your paycheck, and then you just keep your mouth shut. But this guy, Travis I'm gonna butcher his name, I'm sure. Dhanraj.
Dhanraj. There you go. That's good. Actually, Dhanraj.
Dhanraj. Yeah. Well, Travis works. I can do Travis. But it's a high integrity move. It's about principle for him. And remember, so when he says like forced resign, he wasn't fired per se. I'm sure he could have rode that gravy train for a long time, but he is has professional integrity, and he wants to be a journalist. And he just said it's not right the way that I'm being treated. So he resigned. And now his paycheck's going to stop. He's not going to get paid anymore. Obviously, when you resign, you don't get paid. But that's a real sacrifice by someone. And I guess to the extent that surprised me, it surprised me that there's still people out there with that kind of integrity. But what CBC
working
did,
for CBC.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but what CBC did to him is not surprising.
So it's funny because I did not think about looking up the salaries before, but because technically they work for us. Remember, we supply 75% of their fucking budget. So we are supposed to get an idea of how they make. And it seems that the the workforce in April 2024, CBC Radio Canada, blah 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 blah. The compensation ranges from $32,855 to $138,800 a year. I bullshit.
Well, yeah, what does that mean for the fucking mailman? What's the yeah, clearly it's not including the CEO or I guarantee you the entire the brass, the executives are all making well more than $138,000. And this guy too, Travis, I mean, he had his own show. He headlined a show in the evenings. Yeah. He would have been considered top talent. He probably would be getting paid, I'd have to imagine, several hundred K easy.
Well, here it is, right? Because here is what the AI of Google is telling us. CBC on-air staff salaries, including host, reporters, and presenter, fall between less than 40 bullshit and more than $340,000. Yeah, okay. See that to me, we're starting to make sense.
That's a big
We're starting to make sense.
That's a big
6
gap.
Individuals earn more than $300,000 a year. And he's a brown guy that had his own show, and I'm sorry. I love the fact that, for once, I love the fucking fact that guy's black. Because you can't say it's a white thing. You can't say that, oh, he's a conservative because he's a racist.
Well, it almost has to be. It almost has to be a non-white guy, right? And they'll still try. They'll be like, "Oh, he's just self-hating, right? He's he just hates himself. He's closeted, internalized racism. They'll call it internalized racism."
Obviously,
yeah. But
this is how much impact white people have on the brown communities.
It's actually, it kind of makes you laugh, like. Much of like the open borders immigration by the left has been predicated on the belief that if you bring people over and give them free shit, they'll vote for you. That's not entirely true. A lot of people from a lot of the countries we're bringing in are more naturally inclined to be conservative, certainly by Western standards. And then there's the other aspect of you come over here, you're giving all this free shit and you're like, well, fuck, I don't want this gravy train to end. And I probably will if we keep bringing all kinds of people over. So a lot of them might actually oppose. Many immigrants are opposed to the immigration policies.
But let's see the letter that, we're on screen. So happy. Hold on. Let me share this because we got the letter that he sent in.
Yes.
That was an email. That was an internal email that leaked that he sent in. Speaking about how he's been there. He's been in Canadian television for more than 20 years. I've been forced to resign from CBC News. I kind of like that he sent that. Like, I wish he did an all staff, at alt staff, and start writing this stuff. But
I think he did. I think he did two different letters. I think he said one to like all staff and one to his colleagues.
That I believe is the colleagues one. But the part that is interesting is until I began questioning the gap between CBC's stated values and its internal reality, which just look at the event during the election, right? I keep on bringing that up, but it blew my mind that a host and a commentator on the show both said that, oh, we're close to a majority. Like, we are close to a majority. When I pushed for honest conversations about systemic issues and editorial imbalance, I was shut out, sidelined, silenced, and ultimately erased. So he goes on to claim that they're not living their principles, which that's pretty fucking easy to see. What's happening inside this institution is no longer just an internal problem, it's a public one. Yeah, we're paying 1.4 billion fucking dollars to the CBC, so it is clearly a public problem when public funds are used to fund an unbiased news outlet, right?
Yep.
Blah, blah, blah. The erosion of trust in the CBC didn't happen overnight. It's the result of years of dysfunction at the highest level. A small group of insiders on air and his management yield outsized influence, prioritize spins over substance. Wow. Again, look within yourself, Rosemary. She never looked within herself after being told to look within herself, right?
Well, she took a long, hard look within herself, and she saw her paycheck in there, and she realized,
100%.
I know what side. I'm gonna play ball.
Oh yeah, she'll play with the balls. I mean, play ball. Yes. The only thing that sustains broken systems is fear. That I agree with him on that one.
That's right. Yeah.
But I know there will be efforts to discredit me, spin, smear, the usual playbook. You know, I know nothing of that guy. I do not watch CBC because to me it is fucking pure garbage. Absolute fucking garbage. But everything he said there was a lot more polite than I would have done. I would have finished with like 2 fucking fingers up. I wouldn't be working for CBC.
Yeah, two more fingers up. Yeah, of course not. Yeah, no, I mean, everything he's saying is right. It'll be interesting because there's a part there where he says something like, to those who remain or something. Let me see.
I didn't see it in that one. So which one are you talking
about? To those, it's the same letter. It's a little further down. It says, to those still inside, silence shouldn't be the price of your...
There you go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's right there. Okay. No, I'm sorry. Go.
Oh, I gotcha. Silence shouldn't be the price of your paycheck. The only thing that's you did get that part. The only thing that sustains broken systems is fear. The only way things change is when people speak. It's clearly a call to action, and I suspect he has some idea of who the silent conservatives are within CBC, and he's wondering if they're hoping that they'll speak out as well. I think a lot of it will depend on how he's treated now. If he's railroaded and smeared and whatnot, then they'll have, it'll be mission accomplished for the CBC brass, and they'll be able to keep the dissenters quiet and silent. But I think it's a pretty like you said, it's not surprising that the CBC tried to do this. We all know this kind of bias existed in the CBC. I was reading some of his some tweets and stuff on social media. Apparently, he was denied conservative voices on his show. Specifically, Tucker Carlson's name came up. I think he had Tucker booked, and they said nope, not going to do it. I mean, Tucker Carlson's not like radical by any stretch. He's a firmly, clearly conservative, but he's well within the overtone. Like I could imagine I can understand if they wouldn't want, say, Alex Jones on the show, but like Tucker Carlson is a fairly mainstream conservative journalist. If he's too extreme, then that's crazy. The CBC is, and I say this as a liberal, but the CBC has to work for every Canadian, or it doesn't work at all. And clearly, it doesn't work for every Canadian. You can't, we talked about before, the value, the nostalgia people our age might have for it. From the shows we watch, the cartoons, Hockey Night in Canada, grow up watching that. But I think they really, they signed their death warrant when they got into news and specifically politics. If they were going to do that, they should have had like 2 or 3 people whose sole job it was to make sure all they do is that they walk this very fine middle of the road tightrope. If you're going to do it at all, I would recommend not even wading into it, because the second you start getting into politics, if you're a publicly funded entity, you're really putting your funding at risk, because there's always going to be someone who says, no, why is my money going towards these people who don't like me or hate people like me? And those people are correct. How could you make the case that why should conservatives have to be thrilled or just keep their mouth shut for a clearly biased broadcaster who is constantly promoting values and politicians they fundamentally don't agree with. What, like, they pay taxes too. I've never heard a good argument for why they should have to just shut up about it. You know, the opposite wouldn't be true. If it was basically Fox News, you know, the left would be fucking losing their minds.
You know, it all comes down to taxpayers' money. If you're going to be funded by us, that means you need to show us both sides of the equation. You have to. You don't get to pick and choose. You get, and journalism, you know, he's probably a leftist. I would have an interview with him in a heartbeat. I don't care. I don't care who you are. Like, at the end of the day, if you have an opinion that I either agree, disagree with, but you're ready to debate your ideas, I want to have you on. I want to talk to you. I don't care who you voted for. I want to grow. I want to have that discussion. And that's what it should be. That's what journalism is supposed to be about. Like, it's mentioned, Robin was asking if Tucker did an interview with the leader of Iran. I've heard about this, but it seems like it might not be. Wise Guy's telling her that it's not the leader, but the son of the old Shah of Iran. But the point in the matter is that you should talk to the people that you perceive as enemies. That used to be normal back in the 80s, back in the 70s, where, you know, I remember during the Cold War, you would see people in the US talking to Gorbachev. And that guy was like the last leader of the USSR. He's like, that's the enemy right there.
Well, that's still evil incarnate, right? That's how they were.
But you're supposed to be able to have these types of conversation. And, you know, this is where I find it. This is where CBC is so fucking full of shit, because this is an article that CBC released, obviously, but you want to hear both sides of the story, right? So CBC categorically rejects allegations. They're saying right here, that's the part. Kelly did not elaborate on his resignation or the reason that he went on leave earlier this year, nor did she comment on his specific claims about editorial independence and newsroom culture at CBC. She said the broadcaster is limited in what it can say because of privacy and confidentiality consideration. No, but here's the part that's bullshit. We are saddened to see this public attack on the integrity of CBC News, Kelly said. You just need to turn on CBC and see how fucking biased they are. Like, that's a fucking fact. We see it every single time we listen to their bullshit. They're biased as hell. But this is a part, I wish I would have seen this, but they're saying that Dhanraj also posted a Google form on the social media site X earlier Monday, in which he asked people to leave their contact information so he could keep them informed about the case. When the time is right, I'll pull the curtain back, he wrote on the form. I'll share everything. I'll tell you what is really happening inside the walls of your CBC. The post was later removed. So I hope that he does. I hope that he has the balls to actually talk about this, because there's still a lot of Canadians out there. And as you said, people that are probably 40s and above that think that there's still that nostalgia, right? Oh, CBC was so great when I was growing up. But it ain't what it is anymore, bruh. And I really hope that a guy like him has the balls to not only say this, he shouldn't have taken that post down, like, screw this. So I'm curious if is he going to get a job somewhere else where he's going to stop talking about this? Are they going to buy him out? Is he, because everybody's for sale, right? Everybody has a price.
With the fact that he took that down,
that's weak.
Suggests to me that perhaps CBC Legal reached out and made an offer he couldn't refuse. You know what I mean? Wouldn't surprise me if he signed an NDA for a large amount of money, and that might be the last we'll hear of it.
I think this. Hold on, before you go. I just found a small part of that one of the article, because they're basically, here you go. I think that's what you were referring to earlier. I was repeatedly denied access to key newsmakers, he alleged in a copy of his involuntary resignation letter. Internal booking and editorial protocols were weaponized to create structural barrier for some while empowering others, particularly a small circle of senior Ottawa-based journalists. When questions these imbalanced, I was met with silence, resistance, and eventually retaliation. So he's hinting, even the CBC article is hinting at the fact that he could not invite who he wanted. And when he brought up the point, which makes sense to me, he was silenced. So yeah, I really, really hope that he has the balls to carry on with this, that he's not just going to let it go and actually tackle this. Because, you know, it's easy for outside people to say that there's a problem at CBC. People can clearly see it for themselves just by looking at the type of videos and the type of news they report nowadays. But to have it from within the wall, having one of their senior hosts, a guy with his own show, and a brown guy on top of that, brother, that is going to be a nightmare for CBC. So hopefully he has the balls to continue and he doesn't drop it. He doesn't get bought off.
Yeah, and CBC is you know, they're on the ropes as it is right now. They're already, you know, the defund CBC I guess movement is picking up steam, and this is clearly just going to add fuel to the fire. Before we get into the comments, I just want to show one thing here, guys. We are, of course,
is it the video you sent me? Is it the video you sent me?
No, it's just
because I wanted to play that too.
Yeah, no, we'll still get that. It is just it's basically there's one. It's the second letter. It's the one to CBC leadership.
Okay, cool.
It's the part you were just reading, it took a piece from that. So there's one thing I just want to highlight. He basically saying, he's explaining to them why he had to leave. I took that role seriously. I worked to elevate underrepresented stories, blah, blah, blah. And then he says here, but what happens behind the scenes at CBC often contradicts what's shown to the public. Performative diversity, tokenism, and a system designed to elevate certain voices and diminish others. And then he continues where you picked up. I was repeatedly denied access to key newsmakers, internal bookings. So, but it's nice to see him call out performative diversity, right? Because so much of the woke left, as obsessed as they are with the diversity, it's superficial diversity. What color your skin is, who you like to have sex with, you know, whether you identify as a man or a woman, that's nonsense. True diversity would be diversity of opinion, diversity of thought, and that is a monolith at places like the CBC. So it's nice to hear him call that out, and especially to essentially attack them using left-wing language like tokenism, for example. Because frankly, I think so much of like woke leftism can be attacked using much of the woke left's arguments, right? Like, because it's fundamentally hypocritical ideology. It'll say one thing when it benefits that cause in that moment, and say something completely opposite, or denigrate the same thing if someone else does it, a political opponent does it. So it's nice to see someone call that out. And as you say, the fact that he's an insider, the fact that he's a brown guy, all of that just, you know, gives credibility to what he's saying. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. It'll be interesting to see if there's more people. But if I were the CBC, I'd be shitting my bricks or shitting my pants a little bit here now, because they are at the mercy of, you know, the political winds. Right now, they're pretty secure because they've got a liberal government in place for the next couple of years. But it isn't going to be a liberal government forever. It's going to be a conservative government. And right now, the defund the CBC is a pretty strong movement within the Conservative Party and the conservative movement. But stuff like this is just going to throw gasoline on the fire. And if by the time a conservative government does come in, it wouldn't surprise me at all if the defund the CBC is one of the platforms they run on after stuff like
that.
This.
Should have. But again, this is one of the things that they should have beat the drum like a crazy person during the last conservative election, because I don't know of any conservative or common sense liberal that does not want to defund the CBC. Like, again, the woke are going to be pissed. The people working at CBC are going to be pissed, but who the fuck cares? You're never going to bring them to the common sense area, especially now that they're getting paid. But the fact that we're at $1.4 billion a year in funding that we provide to them, that we provide hundreds of millions to others like CTV News and Global, and they're all leftists. They're all leftist media. You don't need to be very bright to see it, but it needs to be defunded. That's a shit ton of fucking money that's being said to the propaganda arm of the Liberal Party, because that's what it's become. It has become a place where liberals can pretty much do whatever the fuck they want, and they will always go after conservatives. And I'm saying conservatives because I don't consider them conservatives, but they still sell that idea. But it's not it's biased. Like, let's be honest here, it's extremely biased, and they're not doing journalism anymore. So I know that Joe Stradamus earlier was asking, is because he's American, so I figure it makes sense to answer this question. But is CBC a monopoly? Are there rival networks? No. The problem is that CBC was considered is considered public broadcasting. It is sponsored by the government at $1.4 billion a year, which is 75% of their budget. And it used to represent somewhat of Canadian values, but they got into politics, and their politics are very clear. They are very leftist, and they always support the liberal government. So you imagine having the equivalent of CNN, MSNBC in the US with no Fox News, and it's sponsored by the government. That's pretty much what you would have, what CBC has become. Because all the right-wing news outlet, or like the Rebel News or the Juno, are self-funded, like they're independent. They're not taking, the government is not funding them as they should. Like none of those fucking news stations should be funded by taxpayers' money. But the point is that there's no competition. Like the CBC is by far the biggest one by a lot. It's not even close. And they're the one that receives the most money. And you can tell they're extremely, extremely biased towards the Liberal Party. And like to have a guy like him quit like that, and quit, however you want to say it, if he was let go, forced out, having a guy like him having a problem when he's been in the news for 20 years, which we all know that they weren't Rebel News, they weren't Juno News, so he was on the leftist side of things. To even for a brown guy, 20 years in the business, that's calling them out now. That doesn't look good for them. I don't know if it's going to move the needle at all, but we'll see. We'll see.
As Sophie says, it's like the BBC in the UK. And a similar
good example.
Yeah, and the BBC has many of the same problems politically. The BBC is also a mouthpiece for the Labour Party in the UK. Guys, we are talking about Travis Dhanraj, the CBC whistleblower. But before we get into the comments, the one last thing I want to say was that response that you read out by CBC, man, like they really don't get it, eh? They do not understand how precarious of a position that they're in. I'm not, far be it from me to give them legal advice on how to handle something. But even if you wanted to say something like, we take these allegations seriously, we're looking into them, and then we never hear from them again. That's that's what I would have recommended if they didn't want to do anything. But to just say we categorically deny these and make it sound like, he's an idiot for suggesting, like, who would ever think that we could be biased is the worst possible strategy, because everybody fucking knows that they're biased. Liberals know that they're biased. Leftists know that they're biased. They just don't care because they're biased in favor of them. But this strategy of just pretending like shocked and appalled, how dare they, how dare they affect, or how dare they impugn the integrity of the CBC? Well, bro, everybody fucking knows it. If you had just said something, like throw some sort of a bone, like, we take these allegations seriously and we will look into it. Everybody knows you're not going to do anything, but at least like you're pretending to do something. Now they're not pretending to do anything. Just flat out, no, you're racist. You're racist if you think that.
This is something I didn't realize. CBC is considered a crown corporation. I
didn't know that. No, I thought they were just. I thought they were some sort of a regular company who just got a lot of funding.
Nope, they are. I just googled it, and yes, the CBC Radio Canada is indeed a crown corporation. It's a federal crown corporation, meaning it's owned by the Canadian government and operates as an independent entity responsible for its own day-to-day activities, including programming decisions. The government cannot dictate its content or influence its operation. And they don't $1.4 billion.
Well, and they don't need to, right? They don't need to. Like, they understand. Like, it's all leftists and liberals that are in power there. They don't need to tell them. They don't need to dictate it. It's sort of like when in the United States, when a fucking oil and gas executive gives $5 million to a senator, you don't need to tell them how you want them to vote. when a bill comes up and it's something to do that's either going to hurt the oil and gas industry, they don't need to go in and say, don't vote for this bill. It's well understood. These people aren't idiots. And I just picked oil and gas. It could be any industry. Like, they're all corrupt. They're all corrupt as fuck. But that's what I mean. Like, and the idea that like, oh, they're not allowed to, dictate editorial control. They don't need to, because the people there understand what the mission is. They understand the narrative. We'll take a few comments. Was there anything you wanted to add there?
Yeah, before we do take some comments, if you're on Next, make sure to like, comment, and reshare this stream. But if you really want to join the conversation is that you see at the bottom right here always takes place on YouTube. So make sure to leave X just for the show. We're not telling you to never go back. Just for the show, leave X. Join us on YouTube at the Poli Orphans, and make sure to subscribe. Join the chat live, have your voice heard, because as you see, if you've ever been on the show, if you've ever listened to the show, we are really driven by the comments that we have. And if you want to support us, if you believe that what we do is important, that independent media is important, because clearly it's important, support us. $2.99 a month. Not even the price of Taj Mahal coffee anymore, like Tajma Tim or Tajma Horton. Tajma Horton. So yeah, support independent media. Allow us to continue doing what we're doing and hopefully make it better.
Yep, help build the community here. So we got some comments coming in from the lead story. Cheryl says, "I'm surprised he didn't resign sooner. It said he had been in the bus for a while." Yeah, that's kind of what we were talking about that earlier. He's been on medical leave, or basically they paid him off to go away. He was probably had to think about it. It's probably gonna be pretty nice just sitting there doing nothing, collecting your $250,000 paycheck or whatever he's getting paid. I'm sure it's got to be up there since he had his own show. That $1.4 billion, that's got that pays for a lot of overinflated and bloated salaries. Sylvie says he works for different mainstream medias. I wouldn't call it integrity, especially accepting a job with CBC. If he gets an offer with another MSM, I bet you he takes it. Yeah, I'm sure he does. I don't begrudge anyone earning a living. It's how he behaves once he's there that I would judge his integrity on. I don't think he's a conservative. I suspect he's somewhat of a common sense liberal, who just kind of couldn't. It offended his sense of fairness the way that the CBC was covering news. But I don't think he's a conservative. I didn't get that vibe from anything that I read from him.
But again, wanting to interview conservative voices does not make you a conservative.
No,
in the same way
that's crazy.
I've had so many So basically, because I talk to you every fucking day, I'm a liberal now.
Yeah, it's the dumbest. It's the dumbest. It's the dumbest thing ever. But that's how the left has. Somewhere along the lines, this is the thinking that's basically taking over, like mainstream liberal or leftist political thought, is that you can't, if you even talk to someone, you're platforming them and means you're agreeing with them. You can't just talk to anybody. And of course, all that is it just sets a stage for the kind of division that we see in society today, where everyone feels like the other side is their enemy, right? Just because they're different. Didn't used to be like this, right? 40, 50, even maybe 30 years ago, you could be a liberal or conservative, and that didn't mean the other side hated you. In a lot of ways, this show was created to try to address that sort of discourse, give us a place where people of all sides of the spectrum can actually have debates without this nonsense that we hate each other, or we can't talk to someone without agreeing. Honestly, like, how weak is your mind that you're afraid to talk to someone who doesn't agree with you? Like, are you afraid that you'll against your will, you'll start to believe the things that they believe? It's ridiculous.
They're just, it's very hard for anybody with common sense to imagine that the only reason they do that is because they don't want to show how insane some of their beliefs are. Because why else would you not want to talk to the
Yeah.
person on the other side of the aisle unless you know that you can defend your belief, you can defend your opinions? Because anybody out there, I've been on a fucking platform as a men's rights activist against 6 people. And you know what happened? I made them look fucking silly. I've been invited to San Francisco. So in September, I'm going to go to San Francisco to debate. I can't say who yet because I'm not allowed to say so, but I'm going to be debating people that are feminists again. I go in there fully fucking knowing that they're going to attack me on my beliefs, but they can't because my beliefs come from common sense. You can't argue common sense. You just can't. So if I can do that, imagine if you paid me $500,000 a year, like fuck off, or $340,000. Sorry. Imagine that's your job is to be a journalist and you don't have the balls to actually have people on your show that will contradict your belief. Plus, at the end of the day, one thing that people might want to realize is I run a lot of interviews where I don't necessarily share my opinion. I just drive the conversation. So you don't even need to agree. You don't need to agree with the person at all. You just need to drive a conversation. Imagine he had Tucker Carlson. He could have asked him a bunch of questions about Canadian politics, how he felt it. And that's it. He doesn't have. It's not a debate. You're not even there to debate. So your job, the journalist, not even. Those interviews are not conversations. Here's a question. Answer the question. I might push back on your answer depending if I think it's clear or I don't agree with you, but it's not meant to be a conversation like you and I have every day. An interview is, here are some questions, answer the question. I speak for 30 seconds, they answer for 5 minutes, whatever. I might challenge, I might not, ask another question. It's not even, you don't even need to bring in your own fucking opinion, just drive the conversation. But we won't even do that. That says a lot about how you feel about your own opinion. If you're not ready to debate them, you're not sure about what you believe in.
Yeah, well, exactly right. That's at the end of the day, if you genuinely believe you're right, or you can defend your arguments or your positions and back them up, you'll welcome any discussion or any debate. Yeah. It's only like if someone just refuses to debate in a good faith debate, all that tells me is that they probably aren't that confident in their ability to defend their positions, and they just want 100%. To. And of course, it feels like somewhere along the way in the last, 10 years or something, the far left or even just the political mainstream left realized a lot of the positions that they held couldn't actually be defended. You see it with the trans stuff all the time. They know that they can't actually defend allowing a person born a male to be placed in women's prisons or to compete in women's sports. And so they just slap something on it like a slogan like trans women are women. And if you disagree with that, you're a hateful bigot. And of course, that's ridiculous. It is, but it's the way the left has gone lately. And, I think it's because deep down they know that they can't often defend many of their positions. Joe Strauman says
there's no other way. Why else would I put myself in a situation where I'm faced by a bunch of angry feminists, if not to defend my belief?
Well, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, why else? But that conversation needs to be had. This is exactly what we're lacking in journalism, in news today, is that conversation, which is all like stories like this remind me why what you and I do is so fucking important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm sure every one of us has some position that we're wrong about, but we'll all, if you believe something, you have to be able to defend it. Or it's not really a belief. It's dogma. It's a religious belief.
100%.
Yeah. And there's no place for that in modern political discourse. Joe
especially says, not if you're funded at $1.4 billion by taxpayers' money. That's, if you're Fox News, I have no problems with Fox News. I have no problems with MSNBC. I got no problems with those two entities because they're technically private.
Yes.
They're not being funded at 75% of their fucking, their budget provided by my money. Same thing as, I didn't realize they were an actual crown corporation, which, goddamn. That is a problem.
Well, that's what makes all the difference. I don't think anyone gives a shit about any company
Fox is biased. MSNBC's biased, obviously.
Yeah, any company is allowed to say whatever they want, but when the public is paying $1.4 billion, you can't have that kind of bias. It is not going to work. I suspect in the next couple of years they probably will be defunded publicly. Anvil Hammer, good to see you again, brother. He says the control of content seems to me to be the issue. I don't watch TV myself, but perhaps defunding isn't the cure. He continues, maybe they could create a leadership and decision makers by choosing the leaders by an unbiased third party with regular changes and oversight. It's certainly a solution. I just think the easiest solution is just stop giving public taxpayer dollars to news corporations, or at the very least, if you insist on funding the CBC to tell, the original intent of the CBC was to tell Canadians story, like tell our own stories to ourselves. And if you want to get back to that mission and just eliminate the news, or certainly the political news aspect, I might be open to that argument. But as it stands right now, like, you don't need CBC to tell you the political news. There's all kinds of other private companies who do that. And frankly, no one even fucking watches news. Nobody watches news anyways. Most people get fucking news from social media, and most people have most people under 60 have a fairly diverse range of news sources because they're getting it from social media. It's the boomers 60 plus that's still reliant on mainstream media. And it's not a coincidence that the boomers were basically a voting monolith in the election back in April. They were the only demographic that went for the Liberals.
And I believe it's, again, if you cannot support yourself, if you need 3/4 of your budget, $1.4 billion to continue existing, you're done. Bye-bye. No, thank you. No, thank you. Absolutely not. There's no reason. If you can't, how is it fair that other media needs to pay for their own way?
Well, I'm surprised, like, CTV again, but
that's
the other,
Crown, right?
Yeah.
That's a Crown corporation. So now we have Canada Post that costs us billions of dollars. We have Via Rail that costs us billions of dollars. Now you have CBC that costs us billions of dollars. Why are we running all those fucking Crown corporations on Canadian tax, on taxpayers' money, when all they do is turn into massive fucking black holes of money? It's like, you're just ditching. The problem is just to shovel more money into it. Yet they're always the ones claiming they need more money. We need more money. We're not making enough money. Hey, fuck off. You know what? No, all those things need to be shut down. Like, we need to rethink VRL. We need to rethink Canada Post. We need to rethink the CBC, because, man, we can't just continue printing. We cannot just continue throwing money at it and not fix the fucking problem, because those are just symptoms. There's a massive problem of mismanagement with everything the fucking government touches. But it's not okay for us to mention it because, that's people's livelihood. Yeah, but fuck you. They work for us. Yeah. They work for us. How much? It's simple. Take a business like Canada Post. How much does it cost to run? Okay, cool. How much would the private sector would do it? Okay, cool. What are the disparities? How much would it cost one versus the other? How better would it be to run one compared to the other? Those are serious analysis that we need to do with every single Crown corporation out there. Is our best way to do it with government, or is it better to do it, or should we give it a try on the private sector? Because like we talked about yesterday, Justin Trudeau in the past 10 years has grown the federal government employees 42% while the private sector grew 3.6%. So the federal government has grown 10 times more in percentage compared to the private sector. So don't give me this shit. Like, you can't tell me that we're not overloaded by government workers when 1 out of 5 working Canadians work for the government.
Well, yeah, and just from a business perspective, there's some fundamental flaws with the Crown Corporation model, right? There's no discipline in the market. There's no reason to not, a typical business has to make reality-based decisions. Do we need this to invest this and buy this piece of equipment? Well, we can't do that because if we do, we're not going to have enough money to pay payroll or run our business, so we don't buy it. A crown corporation doesn't have any such constraints because they know no matter how much they go in the red, the government will always be there to backstop them and give them more money. And that's just pure incentives and economic behavior at play. I'm not, when it comes to something like mail delivery, I think that's different in my opinion, because that's the necessity in modern life. But something like via rail,
so?
I do.
Really?
Yeah. Yep.
How?
I think mail, I believe that you need to have, like mail delivery is same as like fire protection. Like there's some things that I don't think need to be for profit. That's not to say I think Canada Post is run terribly and there should be major reforms, but I don't think you can necessarily expect Canada Post to turn a profit because they are expected to do things that are not.
They're not meant to turn a profit, but they shouldn't cost us billions of dollars every couple of years.
Well,
they shouldn't.
No, they shouldn't. But they have some constraints. For example, one of the points of Canada Post is to ensure every Canadian has regular mail access. If you want to send a letter to someone in Nunavut, then they get it. Now, the private sector, if you want to hire FedEx or UPS to deliver mail to Nunavut, you can, but they're going to charge a fee that will make it almost impossible. Essentially, Canada Post is providing a service to people in far-flung or rural areas that would not be economical for private companies, and it's being subsidized by the people in the cities who, they're by everybody paying the same cost for, say, a stamp or whatnot. But that's a fundamentally different thing from, say, via rail, the other example you gave, which is, we all know the business model for rail companies. Like it doesn't need government subsidies. It can be ran at a profit. And if it's not, and I actually just looked this up as you were talking about it, because I didn't know that I assumed via rail generated a profit. It has not
massive losses.
It has not turned a profit. Since 2017, it's $773 million in the hole as of last year. So yeah, that's an example of something that should not happen, because we know that railroads can be run at a profit. The fact that we're not doing now is just because there's no discipline in the company. There's no discipline in the market, and that's exactly the fatal flaw of these sort of crown corporations. And CBC falls in that too. It should not be.
I don't think they should make a profit. I'm not saying that any of the crown corporations should make a profit because they are on taxpayers' money.
But at least
they shouldn't cost us. No. And I like what Joe is saying here because I totally agree. The USPS actually works at a price controlled for parcel shipping, and even union shops like UPS can still compete at a profit. And this is how it should be. But there should be, if you're going to be a government entity, that doesn't mean you should have a monopoly. It's again, I just want to be able to have the conversation to say, this is how much they cost us every year. Can we do better? Can we let's put some bids out there from private corporations that tell us how much would it cost. Here, I used to answer those type of documents all the time. Like we used to do bids for the government, for private entities. Just they would come out with an RFP and say request for proposal and just say, this is what our service, this is what we want established over the next whatever years. Here's you have a question period of a few weeks or a month, whatever, and then they take bids from people. I've done that for a decade. That's what I did. Yep. So why are we not doing the same for this? Why are we not? We know how much it costs. We know what the services we need. We know how many people needs to be serviced by those goods and services that we offer. Put it out there to the private sector to say, hey, how much would it cost? How much would it cost you to run this? How? And then compare. How much would it cost? But you're asking people to put their job in jeopardy. So it's never going to happen. So it needs to be done by a third party to come in and say, yeah, fuck no. But that's why I liked the Doge approach in the US. Like the guys that were running it or not, there needs to be something like that that happens in Canada. Yeah. Because, you know, man, and this is a great segue to the next topic, because now you're talking about our own government. So now Carney is, as it's announced that Carney wants to have cut rates now. So hold on. Let me just bring that up. That's what you sent me earlier, but it's a perfect segue for this.
Yeah.
So we're talking about crown corporations are costing us billions of fucking dollars every year. We have a PM that just promised $4.3 billion to Ukraine that wants to upgrade our NATO contribution from 2% per GDP. Was not enough. It needs to be 5 now. That's going to end up costing us something like $150 billion until 2032, if I'm not mistaken. And now you have Carney that just requested his ministers to find ways to reduce program spending by 7.5% in the fiscal year that begins on April 1st, 2026, followed by 10% savings in the next year and 15% in the 2028-2029 fiscal year. So we have a government that 3 days ago, fucking Carney, it was estimated that Carney spending would bring our deficit to $92 billion a year, more than the former part-time drama teacher that is Justin Trudeau. Yet he's the banker that was brought in to fix our fucking economy, while he was the one giving economic advices to Justin Trudeau since 2020, 2021. Now he's just spending money. Crown corporations are fucking silencing people. And now he's asking people, because you know what happened, right? People got outraged by this. They're like, hey, what the fuck? $92 billion in deficit when you're an economist, a banker that's supposed to be our savior. So on one side, your elbows up against Trump, getting cum shots in the forehead. And now you're spending money. Oh, but now we need to cut. So which one the fuck is it?
Well,
like, which one is it?
Yeah. And so I mean, we railed a lot yesterday about bloated government spending. And so, I'm going to give credit where it's due. I think cutting spending is a good thing. I think for him to basically, 7.5% across all departments, which is just massive government spending. And so when I first saw that, I was like, oh, okay, nice. Finally, Carney gives us something we can talk good about for him, because I don't want to be shitting on any one person all the time. In my opinion, if we can never ever find something good to say about somebody, we're, as political orphans, we're either doing something wrong or this is literally the worst person in the absolute world.
I wanted to stop you there, because I'm not going to invent good stuff.
Maybe, yeah.
I promise
maybe you think he's that.
But I promise one day I will give something positive about Pierre Poliev. As soon as I find it, I will talk about it. I promise.
That Woody cowboy costume, wasn't it, though?
It would have been great for Halloween.
And so I was like, okay, sweet, something nice, something good I can say, something positive about Mark Carney. And then I continued reading, and it said he's basically doing all these cuttings so that we can meet the increased defense spending budget that he's promised as part of the 5% NATO cut. So it's like, fuck, Mark. Mark, come on, man. Like, you're almost there. You were this close. It's just, I think cutting government spending is a good thing, but the military is part of the government too. That's government spending as well. If you save $10 billion or whatever it is, $5 billion, what have you, 20 billion, whatever, and then dump it into the military to meet your 5% NATO goals, it doesn't really, not the same. Yeah, it's not really savings, is it? It's like that girl math where your girlfriend goes and buys something for $100 and then she brings it back. And then she's like, oh, I bought something else with the money I got back because it was free money. It's like, no, that wasn't free money. That was the money you would have gotten if you just kept girl math, right?
That is awesome. No wonder you don't have a girlfriend.
That was a literal story with my girlfriend a couple months back. She went and bought something, and I was like, you don't need that. She's like, yeah, I don't need it. I brought it, so I'm going to bring it back. Brings it back. Yeah, she's like, she comes back with a different pair of pants or whatever. I'm like, what? She's like, oh, it's free money. No, for fuck's sakes. But that's what he's doing here. That is what he's doing. And he was so close. He was so close. He was right there. I was going to say something good about him, but unfortunately, not today. Today's not the day, but maybe that day will come.
You will say something good after the next article. Let's take some comments, and then I'll share you one of the posts that he made. I believe that was yesterday. And you'll see that you will take that back.
Yep. Okay.
It ain't good. It ain't good.
It ain't good. So we'll take some of these comments here. And Chris H, I do see your one about Real ID. He seems pretty jazzed to talk about this. Don't worry, we haven't got. Well, he just says, I saw digital ID in the title. USA is going crazy right now with Real ID. If there are any US listeners, you don't have to get it. They're tricking you. We haven't got to that yet, so stick around, and we are going to get that. Yeah, I know you and Nico are both on this pretty hard.
I love the fact that I was ripping into Anvil yesterday, but he seems like he's more like me than he is like you. Just saying.
Yeah,
I guess I really do rip in everybody. I don't care. You know, people ask me, "Are you racist?" You know what? I hate every racist equally.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, does that make me a racist? I don't know.
And actually, like people. Speaking of Anvil, I'll just take the last comment from the last discussion. He says, "Guaranteed postal service seems like a service to hang on to." I agree with that. Okay, Joe, about this topic we just had here, says, I'm starting to think Canada suffers from their very own go along to get along nature because they're so mellow. Really ruthless pricks have managed to infiltrate and capture the entire government. I think that's actually kind of a pretty astute observation, Joe. I think we have there is sort of a go along to get along nature. Politics isn't the same here as it is in Canada. Now, you might think that's a good thing or a bad thing. Personally, I kind of like it. I remember growing up, you'd watch these like crazy political rallies in the States where they're filling stadiums, and there's just nothing like that here. People don't get jazzed up for politics the way they do in the States, and it's just a different. They do now, yeah. It's just a different culture. But I think there might be something here in that, people are just kind of not really engaged, and when you're not engaged, it allows, as you said, ruthless pricks to sort of worm their way in and do sort of do their thing. And he continues, now we got guys like Nico and Rob saying like, what the fuck is this? Yeah, and there's a lot of people up here saying those sorts of things, but we are still, I believe, the minority. Most people are. It's really frustrating to be from the left side or a liberal, because I know a lot of people that I know, if they knew the things that I knew or saw things I said, that they wouldn't agree with it, and it would cause them to like think twice. But if you try to talk to them about it, they're like, oh no, it's just right-wing conspiracy theories. It's like, no, motherfucker, they really are putting men in female prisons, like rapists, male rapists, and women are being raped. It's actually happening. Oh no, it's right-wing meme. No, man, it's not. But that's the life of being a common sense liberal in this day and age.
Yeah, but the thing is, I could say the same thing about you. You are more conservative than a liberal, but you will never call yourself a conservative.
No, never.
See, not ever. The people that you're accusing of not listening to you, you're doing it to me, bitch.
No, yeah, not ever.
See, there you go.
Chris Hayes goes, elbows up, and Trump annexation, I think, is a ruse. The Western elites wants to beef up Western military power to go with Russia and China primarily.
I think it was Misfit that kept on talking about this, right?
What's that? Was that the North American Union thing?
I that would not surprise me in the slightest either. That whole Europe trying to affiliate with Europe, like Mark Carney, what he's doing is to piss off Canadians to somehow make it easier to. Because, if we start with the basis that I don't believe that Mark Carney is going to be here after his 4 years, I wouldn't even be surprised if he's not here for his full 4 years. He's really just here to finish the job Justin Trudeau started. And, man, it's so hard when you're a conspiracy theorist. Any way I look, it's bad. Any way I look, it's bad. So is it possible that this is all a game to play into the 51st state, or us becoming part of the US? Sure. Is it all to push a union between Canada, the US, and Mexico to have kind of a euro dollar like they do in Europe?
Like a North American. To be honest, I'd like to hear the proposal for that, because there are some scenarios where I might think, fuck, that's actually not a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea as a Canadian, because we'd raise the price of our money.
Yeah.
Plus, I could just completely move as a Canadian down south.
It'd be great for you. It'd be great for you.
Fuck yeah, but at the same time, would it be a good thing in the long run?
That's what I mean. I don't feel strongly one way or the other, but I wouldn't dismiss it out of hand. I would definitely want to hear. I'd be very interested in the debate or the campaign that happened to try to, the way that the Alberta sovereignty movement is sort of right now trying to go and make the case for why they should leave to the rest of Alberta. I'll be interested to see the way that people who supported this North American Union, how they made that case. Wise Guy says, so it's easy. All politicians and managers in the government and Crown Corporation take a 7.5% pay cut and we're done. Oh, Wise Guy. That's not what.
Stop with your common sense approach.
Yeah. Stop with the comedy approach. That's not ever going to happen. The elites and the managerial class are never going to take any cuts. Essentially, they will just find some way to, and they also won't be cutting the budget for the plastering the building in LGBTQ pride parades and fucking all that stuff. That's got to stay. It'll just be something like less concrete for the guys who make roads, less steel for the guys who make bridges, and less of the stuff we actually need and more of the shit that we don't.
Yeah, they're definitely not going to cut their own salaries. They're definitely going to cut their own pension. They're definitely not going to get their... I don't know if you've ever looked at the pay scale on the government workers, but they have multiple, like they have different pay scale depending on the type of work that you do. They have specific classification, but within those classifications, you have automatic boosts every year. Like your salary gets an automatic, like you get a pay raise pretty much every few months, every year, whatever it is, automatic on your bracket. But you start here, this is your bracket, and if you feel that you're too good for that bracket, you can easily apply for another job. There's a bunch of internal jobs that we don't get to see as external to the US, to the government. So their whole system is so full of shit. It is not about how good you're doing your job, is how long you're staying there. How long can you keep your job while being it possible for you to get fired? Like I remember my mom was in the reserve before she retired. And there was this woman that was so fucking obese that she could not pass her physical every year. Because even as a reservist, you need to be able you still need to be in shape enough in case you need to protect us. An obese person, contrary to popular belief, is a great shield for regular sized people. Just put them in front, right? But she failed year after year and yet never lost her job. But my mom used to say that, you would go to her desk, it was always filled with candy, is always filled with crap. Like you don't get obesity like you get a cold, right? Let's be honest here. It's self-inflicted.
Yes.
So, but you have somebody that is a reservist that's supposed to be in shape to be ready to be called to action if we ever need to, but she fails her physical every year, and yet she still has a job because she probably has a personal issue in her life that can excuse why she failed.
Oh yeah,
it's the dumbest fucking thing. I'm an electrician, but I'm scared of electricity, so I can't really do my job properly anymore because I'm scared of getting zapped. But I work for the government, so it's okay. I'll just do nothing. I'll just give people pair of pliers every now and then. I'll give them it's the dumbest fucking thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to staff the government based on people who can do the job. If you can't do the job, shouldn't be working there.
No, but it's almost impossible, right? You think unions are bad? Imagine trying to fire a government worker. It's going to take you a lot to fire one.
Oh yeah, it's almost impossible.
There's a good reason why everybody wants those jobs, right? Or there's so many people that want those jobs.
Yep. Joe Stradamus says Nico and I are both racist, human racist. You guys hate everyone equally, correct?
God damn, Joe. What the fuck's going on? We seem to agree on a lot of shit. Can you go back to being a weird fucking leftist? Stop with this bullshit, Joe. Stop it!
Anvil Hammer says, I think if we don't increase our military, we're going to regret it. The polar region is becoming a viable transport route. We need to police our polar borders. I mean, look, that's a fair take. And I full disclosure, I'm not an expert in military funding right now. I don't actually know what our military needs. And if we actually need that, then I'm okay with that. I guess for me, it's just... part of me is skeptical that it's not just a way to curry favor with Trump. If the experts look at it like actual experts, not like, ideologues or people who are captured, and they say that we actually need to increase funding military, I'm okay with that, because you're right. The Arctic region is going to be a pretty contested region over the next few decades, and we would have to have some sort of credible military deterrent. broadly speaking, though, if it's absolutely determined that we need that, then let's find cuts somewhere else. But I do think that just the size of government is just too big right now.
My problem with the funding that Carney wants to put forward has nothing to do with not wanting to fund our own military. I just don't want to do it as part of NATO. That's my problem. Because you know that fucking money is not going 100% to us. Why the fuck are we part of a union group that we have no reasons to be part of, that does not even have a job anymore? So if they want to form an association within the European countries in order to put all their military together because of where they are geographically, all the power to you. We have no fucking reasons to be part of it. It doesn't bring us anything. They're not gonna be there to save us if China decides to attack us from the West. Like, we're gonna wait for what? Strong.
Well, I think America will, but that has nothing to do with NATO. It wouldn't matter if we were in NATO or not.
But that's exactly my point. But we should put money in our own military, not in our military through NATO. Fuck NATO, leave NATO, and restructure our own military. But before we have to admit that we need to look at the structure of our military. Because having a bunch of, just remember the minister sworn in, you even passed a comment on how the military were walking. They were all out of sync. You had a bunch of obese women in that fucking walk. I'm surprised they weren't huffing and puffing, but all to say, is this really our military now? All the leaders seems to be women, and I'm sorry to the women out there. I just don't think that women should be leading anybody in the fucking military, especially not on the front lines. You should not be in power. Our fucking what is it? Our defense minister is not even somebody from the military. He's a dude that has nothing to do with it. Like, what the fuck is happening? This is, again, something. There's a massive restructuring that needs to be done in our military before we even start just dumping money at the problem. And, you know, we should have my buddy should come up. I just don't know if he would talk about it publicly. I don't know how.
He probably won't talk about it at all.
That's the thing, because he has a lot of contracts, as in he trains people on hand-to-hand combat and guns. So I don't know to which extent, but you've talked about this before. I've heard it from a lot of other people. There's a problem in our military.
There's morale
and it needs to be addressed before we start just dumping at the problem. There is a culture issue in the military that needs to be addressed, that needs to be revised, that needs to be looked at to say, hey, what the fuck's going on here? How do we make it better? Then you can start dumping money at it. But right now, I think we need to address the culture problem in the same way as the crown corporations, right? We've been dumping money at it, and it's not getting any better because there's a culture problem, or there's a problem, there's a management problem. Whatever the fuck the problem is, it needs to be addressed first. It needs to be looked at, addressed, and then maybe you put money on it, right?
Yeah, I've been out of the military for about 15 years now, but I still have friends in there, and morale is really low. Most guys are just collecting a paycheck; they're just mailing it in. The one thing I hear a lot is just this, culture. I think is a good word. It's a loss of warrior culture, and you might. When people say that, I know there are some people, probably not too many that listen to this show, but some people who will roll their eyes and be like, "Oh, well, that's toxic masculinity." Like, no, that's the fucking military, man. It is a machine designed to kill people, and that might be politically incorrect to say, but that is what it is, and it has to have a military ethos, a warrior ethos, a warrior ethic, where people, you're not talking about like who get off on killing people, but certainly who are at the very least willing to do it. And you do want a certain amount of enthusiasm about it, frankly. Like when I was in the military, the vibe that I got was most guys wanted to go out and do their job, and it was the military's leadership's position to rein them in. You've almost got your attack dogs on the leash, and but now it's just everyone's just like these little fucking poodles going around like just whimpering, and if a war breaks out, we're in a bad spot. As you said, it's a culture thing. Now, it's also, I'm sure, a funding thing. I'm sure that the military is underfunded, and I hear that a lot too. Old equipment. A lot of guys going on exercise and not getting any ammunition. And and that's the kind of funding that I definitely think, you know, should be addressed. I think, now correct me if I'm wrong, I believe most NATO spending does reflect military spending. Like, I don't think it's like you spend like buy stuff and then give it to NATO. I think it's within your military. But some of it has to go to like overhead and to like.
And that's exactly my point. Why do we need to do it through NATO? Is my point.
Yeah.
Like, we've addressed this. Both you and I don't really understand why the fuck NATO still exists. At least not from a Canadian perspective, because it was done after the Second World War. It was heavily used during the Cold War with Russia or the USSR.
It was created like then, very explicitly to oppose the Soviet Union. Clearly,
it was created after the Second World War, but it was heavily used during the 70s, especially during the Cold War. But the point is that I don't see the value of NATO for us anymore. And why, if it turns out that we start looking at the culture problem in the military, we start really doing a real assessment. We need a minister that understands what the military is, because he was part of it. And then we realize that it is $150 billion over the next 7 years that it costs us to fix it, to make it better, then fucking do it. I have no problems with them spending on our military. On the contrary, I believe that it's fucking a necessity. My point is that we don't need to do it through fucking NATO. Remove NATO from the equation and just keep it Canadian. I don't want to be part of a foreign fucking affair that will go after countries that we have no business being part of. I believe that our military should be a self-defense thing. I'm a martial artist. I believe in self-defense. I believe that if you have intentions to hurt me, I will hurt you. I will finish that fucking fight, and that's how it should be. We shouldn't be overseas getting involved in Ukraine versus Russia. That is not how it should be ran. That has nothing to do with our problems. In the same way, we shouldn't be in the Israel, Palestine / Iran / whatever the fuck country. Not my problem. Don't give a fuck. We have enough problems here in Canada or in North America to deal with. So this is the part. If it costs 150 billion, if that's the cost, that 150 billion is needed to revamp our military, let's fucking do it. But fuck NATO.
Yeah, I think. I mean, my issue with NATO is, as you said, it's a tool without a purpose, right? It was clearly primarily used to oppose the Soviet Union and during the Cold War, but after the Cold War ended and the Soviet Union dissolved in the early 90s, there just was no purpose to it. It kind of floundered around, and it got involved in the Balkans a little bit, Sarajevo, and then even a little bit in Afghanistan, and even now there's no one's made the case for why NATO exists. And I just have, this isn't even against NATO specifically. It's more of a big picture world philosophy that a large standing army with no enemy will create one. It is a tool, and it's a giant hammer. And anyone who knows anything about bureaucracies, especially a military bureaucracy, knows that a giant hammer just sitting there is a dangerous thing, because it's going to go around looking for a nail. And, you can feel however you want about the Russia-Ukraine war. You can pick whatever side you want, but it's undeniable that NATO increasingly was encroaching on Russian sovereignty and Russian territory, and it was fairly intolerable to if the Soviet Union had won the Cold War, and then all of a sudden Germany becomes a Warsaw Pact nation, and now France, and now the UK, and then Canada start to think about joining the Warsaw Pact, I guarantee you America would be very threatened and would lash out in some way and do something. So you do have to consider all those things. I don't think it's necessary for our defense. Clearly the biggest geopolitical modern military threat would be China, but if China attacks, say, Canada,
NATO ain't saving us.
No, NATO ain't saving us, but the United States will, regardless of war NATO, just because it's in their interest to not have fucking China on their doorstep. So they will help us. But I guarantee you fucking Germany and France are not going to war with China because
the U.S. has as big of a military than all the EU countries combined.
Oh yeah,
they're about 1.5 million active soldiers in the U.S. Army, and the same for EU nations. So imagine, and that's just active. I had to look at the numbers. I can't remember what they are by heart, but the amount of people in the US that have served are still below 65 of age is insane. Is insane the amount of soldiers that they have there, the soldier mentality. So the thing is if the EU, if NATO makes sense for the EU to have to, because they're all connected to each other, they want to protect each other, I get it. That means that the same thing should be true between Canada and the US. We should have our own NATO, however the fuck you want to call it, because geographically it makes sense. We're connected. We're on a massive fucking island, and maybe we should have an association between Canada, the US, and Mexico to just say, you know what, you protect the north, you guys protect the south, we protect the US protects the middle. You know, say that to me. If you want to sell me on a NATO type of business model, this is the only one that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Oh, of course it does, because if we're getting attacked, it's going to be from the Atlantic, the Pacific. It's going to be from the north, going to be from the south. So might as well have, if you believe in that. I'm not saying that I do. I'm just saying if you want go logically, that makes way more sense than a NATO.
A NATO type Europe, half of Europe, and yeah.
Yep, 100%.
I agree with that.
So you want to take some of those comments, like starting here? I really need to go to the bathroom, and
go ahead. Chris H says Pete Hegseth told the EU that the US and the EU need to divide the military burden, and that the EU and Canada have to bear more of the military burden. That's why we have to pay 5% to NATO now. Yeah, I mean, I feel like most of what we just talked about kind of covers a lot of that. If you're pro NATO, obviously you're going to be supportive of that, regardless of NATO, not NATO, whatever. It's undeniably clear the United States have shouldered a huge amount of the defense and security burden for the entire Western world. That's why Canada and Europe have gotten away with having a relatively weak military, because we've all been under the umbrella of American protection. We've known that America would not allow anyone to really fuck with us. And most American presidents up until Donald Trump have been okay with that arrangement. And don't get me wrong, they haven't done this necessarily out of the goodness of their heart. There have been definitely some benefits that America has gotten from this arrangement. But Donald Trump is clearly not okay with it. He's the first president that says, and it's hard to argue with him. It's hard to argue the sense of that the rest of the world isn't paying their fair share. We can disagree with it. We can agree with it. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. What matters is what America is going to do. And I think that we see what they're going to do. And we talk about leverage here a lot as relates to Canada. When we negotiate with the United States, we need to understand that we don't have a lot of leverage. And we have to be aware of the reality of the situation. You have to know who you're negotiating with, and you have to know what their strengths are and your strength is. And we just have to, basically it's a new paradigm in the Western world, and I think we all need to adjust to that. Robin says it surely doesn't make us feel safe when the military is run by feminine energy and not the masculine energy. That is what protection has tended to be. That's actually a great comment. We haven't really discussed the sort of gender wars or male versus female discussion on the show in a while, but if you've been a listener for a little while, you would have heard us say things like, I personally believe that men and women have their own strengths, their own weaknesses. We're all equal, and certainly should be equal under the eyes of the law. But there are things that men do just naturally better. There are things that women do naturally better. We are not competitors. We are partners. And undeniably, one of the things that men do better is the role of protector, physical protector, which is literally exactly what a military is. It doesn't make any sense to have feminine energy spread throughout the entire military, certainly. And that stuff comes from the very top. We have, if you like, not only is the chief of defense staff, the top soldier, a female, but I believe like the majority of all of them, there's like a group, like, the chief of defense staffs, like there's the head of the army, the head of the Air Force, the head of the Navy. I think of the like 5 or 6 of them that all make up this core of leadership, 4 of them are female. That's crazy. It has nothing to do with the competence of the women specifically. And it's entirely about Yeah, as you said, feminine energy run the military. That sounds like a recipe for disaster. It sounds like a nation that's not serious about its military. I guarantee you wouldn't have that in a military that's actually in use regularly, or say the Ukrainian military, or even the Chinese military, where they expect at some point they're probably going to have to use it. Wise Guy says, we have always depended on the U.S. for protection, and I see no reason to change now. As long as the U.S. is heavily invested in Canada, they will protect their interests. And that's just a fact, a matter of life. That is, that's why in some ways we don't, NATO primarily benefited Europe. NATO was created to repel the hordes of Soviet tanks storming across the Iron Curtain that separated East from West Germany. And it doesn't, obviously that threat doesn't exist anymore. Not in the same way. We still have security concerns, but I believe NATO's obsolete. I don't think it would be like, I don't think we're going to get any real protection from Europe if shit hits the fan. At the same time, if shit hits the fan over there, which is far more likely, I don't want us to be dragged into it either. Right now, we're legally obligated to be dragged into a war if, say, Germany was attacked or whatnot. But as Wise Guy says, the U.S. will always protect their interests, and that isn't, it is not in their interest to have a Chinese presence in Canada, even if they hate us. It has nothing to do with them liking us. It's just not in their interest. So I don't think we really need to worry about that in the same way that, maybe some of the European countries do. But at the end of the day, Canada has to worry about Canadian interests, not European interests.
It's a good place to come back. I agree.
Yeah. Chris H says NATO's purpose today is to uphold Western hegemonic power. Canada unfortunately benefits economically from this global order the U.S. and NATO create. Canada benefits in terms of mining globally. Yeah. I mean, I feel like truly though, Western hegemonic power emanates from the United States. Whether NATO existed or not, that would still exist.
Agreed.
And I don't think NATO adds a whole lot. Like NATO's headquartered in Europe, right? Like it was fundamentally created to fight off the Soviet tanks that would be storming, or they worried would storm across the plains of Germany. But U.S. hegemonic power is global, and with or without NATO, I believe we're still going to benefit from that. And now, the one thing that I could give some credibility to, if someone said, "Listen," because I believe that the next major geopolitical trend will probably be a new Cold War, except China is taking the place of the Soviet Union. Russia will probably be sort of like their right-hand man. They'll be aligned with China. And then it will be these two blocks, the Chinese bloc and the Western bloc, vying for influence and control of Africa, some of Europe, probably even South America. And maybe you could say maybe NATO has a value if it were retooled to basically play the same role in the old Cold War in this one. But considering that Cold War doesn't actually even exist yet, and this is all hypothetical, it would have to be. I wouldn't find a very persuasive argument.
I'm extremely biased when it comes to NATO. Fuck NATO and get rid of that shit and invest that money in our own military without a third party involved. There's no reasons for it to be there in the first place. So, not our problem.
Anvil Haber, I have relatives in the military, sons. It's true that morale's down. It can change. Not my problem in fucking NATO. Who do you think is going to come to our aid if Trump decides to invade? I hate to tell you this. If Trump decides to invade, there's nobody coming to our aid.
No.
Europe will not. I don't think Trump's not going to invade. I mean, even him personally, he's ruled that out.
He's not going to do it.
He hasn't even ruled out invading Greenland. Like he said, you never know. But it's just it's not in any. It's sort of like a liberal fever sort of. It's like a symptom of like TDS. This idea that he's not he's going to invade Canada. That's just not. I guess anything theoretically could happen. Who knows? But in terms of actual probability of events, it's up there with like a fucking asteroid destroying civilization. It's not a real threat. But if it did, Europe is not coming to our aid. I promise you that.
Plus, the point here's the point. Okay, If you're capable of defending yourself, you're not going to call the police. I lived in the woods for years. There was no police there. Guess who was responsible for keeping myself, my wife safe? Me. Me. I could not depend on somebody else to come and protect me. And that's the problem with NATO. The problem with, imagine that we're in Canada, we're very fucking far away from where NATO is. Same way as I was very far from a police response. If somebody attacks us right now, okay, you're going to send an email to NATO, to info@nato.com, and they're going to get back to you. No, but the point is, you're going to pick up the phone and
of NATO. 80% of NATO is America. 80% of NATO is America.
But you know I need your help. I need your help in the same way as me. No, you're going to defend yourself. So let's make sure that we have the tools as Canadians to defend ourselves and not be dependent on a third party that shouldn't even be there in the first place. But you can argue it. You know what? I'm not trying to tell you what to think. If you think NATO has a need to exist, awesome. I'm not debating you. I really don't care that it has a need to exist or not. My point is we have no business being part of it because it doesn't bring us shit. They're not the one that's gonna help us. The US is. Turns out the US is part of NATO. But if the US wasn't part of NATO, we weren't part of NATO, do you really think the US wouldn't help us out? That's my point.
Yeah, no, they would.
The NATO is a third party that does not need to exist between us and the US. We can deal with the US directly without dealing with European countries. That's my point. I'd much rather have the tools to defend myself than to depend on a third party to help me out in case there's a problem. And what the fuck is NATO going to do no matter what if the Chinese invade us or if the Russians invade us? What the fuck are they going to do?
Well, I mean,
as the US to help us?
70% of NATO, America funds NATO by 70%. NATO is America. America is NATO. Like the idea that NATO would come to our aid if America invades is ridiculous because it will be NATO invading us if America invades. There's just like I think a lot of people don't realize how weak European militaries have gotten, and they've essentially been, you know, what? So Donald Trump met a lot. He does this thing a lot where he says something that sounds outlandish and he's wrong about the facts, but he's right about the spirit of what he's saying. Like when he says things like, oh, all these other countries, we're subsidizing all these countries. That's not true factually. Like America's not giving money to these countries, but it's true in spirit because what happens is many of these countries who would have been spending hundreds of billions on military are not doing that now because they know that a giant share of the burden is being shouldered by America and that they will protect them. And so in a sense,
awesome.
in effect, it is subsidizing them because it allows them to spend those hundreds of billions on themselves because America is spending an extremely large amount on their own military. And you know, I think most people think it's obscene to spend $700 billion a year on your military, but that is, you know, that's their thing.
And this seems to be the numbers I'm seeing a bit of everywhere because I wanted to confirm what you were saying about the spending, but it seems like the US is spending about $650 billion in NATO compared to 243 for the combined other countries. Yeah. So that's like 2/3, right? Give or take.
Yeah, exactly. So about 70%, give or take. So because what's 650 plus 243, you're
looking at about 62%, give or take. Give or take. Around between 60 and 70%.
Basically, NATO is America. America is NATO. And if America attacks us, it will be NATO attacking us, and NATO is not coming to our help, to our benefit.
I wanted to take this one, Danny D. Why do we need NATO? Why do we need the Golden Dome if we have NATO? I think we pretty much covered that. Like, I see NATO is not going to protect us against ballistic missiles.
No, Canada. It's a separate thing. Yeah,
exactly. We're basically, in my opinion, Canada and the US are a lot more beneficial to European countries than the European countries are to Canada and the US.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And that's my point. Why would we be part of something that we don't need to be part of? It doesn't make us better. I'd much rather be independent and have a better relationship with the US when it comes to the military than having a better relationship with NATO. I really don't care what's going on in Europe outside of it's a warning. Whatever Europe is doing, I don't want to do what Europe is doing because clearly it's not fucking working. So I don't want to do what Europe is doing. I don't want to get involved in other people's business. I just wish we took care of more Canadians. And if we need to spend more money on our military, we should do it without a third party that is NATO. That's it.
Yeah. Robin, so we're talking about the difference in masculine and feminine energy. She says feminine energy is nurturing, masculine energy is protecting, basic human knowledge. Yeah, I mean that's and Therese says so with you, Robin. That's exactly what I was getting at a few minutes ago.
Yep.
You know, men protect, women nurture, and that's it wouldn't make any sense to have, you know, to have women as the leadership role in a military. I'm not saying women shouldn't be in the military, of course not, and certainly in jobs that are not like on frontline units. You know, support, logistics, absolutely. I knew lots of women in the military who are great at their jobs, but like as a leadership role, like that is going to have an effect on the downstream, on the culture, on the morale. Wise Guy says NATO is heavily involved in Ukraine and Russia, and Russia still kicked their ass. NATO is useless. It's a huge waste of money. Russia is not a threat to Europe. NATO is a threat to Russia, though. Yeah, I mean, I don't profess to be an expert in geopolitics or know what's going on in Vladimir Putin's mind. I just don't see him as a threat to. I don't think he wants to invade Europe. I think this move is, whether he's right or wrong, I think he sees it as a self-defense move. He sees NATO encroaching, and remember, he's a Cold Warrior too, right? Like he grew up in the KGB, so he's going to have a completely different opinion about NATO than say someone in the West does. And rightly or wrongly, he might be right, he might be wrong. Maybe there is no actual threat from NATO for him, but he believes that there is, and I don't think him invading Ukraine means he's setting his sights on Germany next and then France. Like, I don't think he's like Hitler-esque, that kind of a dictator or anything like that. And that's not even any being pro-Putin or anything. He is a dictator in a way in his own country, but I don't think he's that like a megalomaniac or megalomaniacal dictator.
You're talking to the Frenchie to make sure to pronounce long words properly. Not your best call there, brother. I agree with you, but I want to take one more, then let's put a pin in that one because we could go forever. But Anvil is saying all free countries around the world will come to our aid. All of them. Wrong. Wrong. No, it's our responsibility to help others, and seems like nobody is helping.
Who came to Iraq's aid? Who came to Afghanistan's aid? Who came to Iraq's aid? Who came to Vietnam's aid?
It's us.
There's just no one's going to go against the United States. They're by far an enormous superpower. I think a lot of people don't understand the discrepancy between military power between America and the only country who's remotely close is China. And I guess Russia, if you consider
maybe Russia,
their
maybe
nukes.
Russia too.
Consider their nukes,
yes.
But well, I mean, I really think it's moot, anyways. Trump's not going to invade Canada, and if he does, we're fucked, anyways. Even if at some point, somewhere down the line, someone comes to our help, we will have, we'll be fucked. It'll be.
We're not at the end of the day. We're not fighting the U.S.
No,
and NATO is not going to help us if the U.S. were to invade. Not that I'm saying it's going to happen, because I don't see it. If we ever become,
there's no point to it.
No, if we ever become the U.S., it will be economically. Is that Canada will be so fucking damaged that to save us, we're going to join the U.S. Is that what's happening right now? Could be. I wouldn't be surprised if that's exactly what's going on. But it's not going to be put with military boots on the ground.
No,
it's not. No. It's going to be done economically through signing of papers. It's not going to be done through the military. But the point is, if NATO cannot defend itself against its 60% budget. Like, the Americans are literally keeping NATO alive. So how the fuck can they protect us against the biggest donor to NATO? It doesn't make any sense. Plus, they're not here. That's why I used the example earlier of imagine being in the woods 45 minutes away from the closest police station and somebody wants to steal from you. Somebody wants to invade your house. And you don't have guns, you're just like, NATO, NATO. Yeah, you're fucked. You're gonna get fucked until NATO sends some letters.
Anvils, and then we'll move on to this. Says, where's your proof they won't help us? Just the Netherlands alone will come. We have serious connection to saving Europe from Nazis. I mean, yeah, and we do. They love us so they love Canada over in the Netherlands. They're not going on a suicide mission. I don't even think Netherlands has a military anymore.
I'm Googling it right now.
Yeah, they're not going on a suicide mission against the United States. They're just not. I mean, my proof is just no. There's no other countries that are suicidal. You know, if in America, who would okay, go ahead.
The Netherlands Armed Forces currently has approximately 46,000 active and reserve personnel. This includes the Royal Netherlands Army, Navy, Air, and Space Force, and the Royal Marshalsea. I don't know what that word is, but that's to say all the people that would defend you and all the people that are bureaucrats. Yeah. So 46,000 people, they're going to go against an army that has an active member list of $1.5 million, 1.5 million people. Yeah, no, not going to happen.
Well, I mean, and America's military strength is not even in its ground troops. It's in its technology. It's missiles. It's ballistic missiles. It's bombers. They would make essentially mincemeat out of any military in the world except for China's. Even conventional military, they would wipe the floor with Russia in like 2 days. And the fact of the matter is, if America ever did invade, the fucking world will be terrified of them, because that would be a sign that they have gone batshit crazy. Like, if Americans invades Canada, something has gone terribly, terribly wrong, and there's no one in the world who would go on a suicide mission. And even if they did, even if they eventually came to our aid, like, for example, Joe Stradamus says China did effectively defeat the U.S. and Vietnam. Yeah, there's some differences though. Like, China is physically connected to Vietnam, so they could send lots of troops down like the Ho Chi Minh Trail and do that stuff. There's no one physically connected to us except for America.
Oh no, we're fucked. Oh no,
we're really very isolated. And even still, though, it's not like Vietnam was destroyed. You know what I mean? Like, technically, obviously, America lost Vietnam, but that was no, that was no compensation to the Vietnamese, whose country was absolutely destroyed, and many, 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 many thousands of people were killed. So even if some theoretical group came to help us, and the only country who would even be able to help us would be China. I'm not sure we would.
They're not going to help us.
Well, they'll help us. They'll help us, and then we probably won't like the aftermath, because they will be leaving. I promise you that. We're essentially fucked if America invades Canada. And I mean, yeah, anything could happen. An asteroid could destroy Earth tomorrow, but those are about the same probabilities. But yeah, I mean, we could. I don't see that as anything kind of realistic. And I think there'd be absolutely zero interest in America. Most Americans would be like, "What the fuck?" Americans don't want to invade Canada.
They don't want all the liberals in Canada to be part of the U.S. I can tell you that much, because there's a shit ton of that. They don't want to inject the equivalent of California within their own country. I'm just saying. Let's just put a pin to it, because this is philosophical at this point. It's not even news.
Yep.
I wanted to talk about this, and this is going to be fast. It's just that it's something that we talk about all the time. But yesterday, Mark Carney again is playing the Muslim values or Canadian values by telling us that it's important. An important meeting with Special Representative Amira El Gawabi. Canada's new government is fighting the rise in Islamophobia and hate with constructive conversation and new measures to end the violence, vandalism, and intimidation that threatens our communities. Bull fucking shit.
Yeah, I don't like. What is he talking about? Islamophobia. There isn't any real Islamophobia. Now, some people are getting annoyed when they see people of a particular religion who are shutting down streets to pray, which actually obviously has nothing to do with praying. We did that episode a few back where we showed many videos of people in Toronto There's hundreds of Muslims who are literally shutting down Bloor Street to pray. Now, that's not prayer. That's not practicing religion. That's a show of force. That's an act of dominance. And it's like Carney's talking about like Islamophobia, but what he's talking about is people saying things like, maybe Muslims shouldn't be allowed to shut down streets. I guarantee you Christians wouldn't be allowed to, nor should Christians be allowed to. No religion should be elevated to some special status where they are given special privileges in society that no one else gets. In a multicultural, diverse society, the only possible policy you can have is across the board application to every single religion. And frankly, we live in a secular society. Religion has no place in public life. If you want to practice your religion in public life, if you want to shut down streets to pray, then go somewhere where you can do that. That's not how we do things here in the West. It's not how we do things here in Canada.
Did you know that Canada has a special representative on combating Islamophobia?
It's such nonsense, man. Canada is
like that. That person. No, hold on. That person right here is a government representative, because you know that gc.ca is governmentofcanada.ca. So that is a legitimate Canada government email address right here. So we have somebody that is in place to combat Islamophobia.
That's like, really, like, Canada is by far, regardless of what the far left woke idiots will say, Canada is by far one of, if not certainly one of the most tolerant, open-minded, diverse societies in the world. We do not need there is not an Islamophobic problem, but they're able to justify this because they will define Islamophobia in practice as any criticism made against someone who happens to be a Muslim. That's Islamophobia. And of course, if that's your definition, then you will see Islamophobia wherever you go, especially where you're in a society where Muslims are doing lots of things that people are going to complain about, such as shutting down streets to pray. We talk a lot about the immigration thing. I believe that immigration is a good thing when done correctly, done legally. But one thing that has to be applied here, there has to be a values test. You have to align with Western and Canadian values. That means equality of women. Women are not property. And this is where we go off about the niqab thing, where, if you want to force your daughter or your wife to dress head to toe in cover herself in garb only for her eyes, that's fine, but that's not our values. You stay the fuck home if that's what you want to do. Don't bring that shit here, because that is not Western values. That is not Canadian values. We have equality of the sexes here. If you believe that homosexuality should be criminalized, as a large majority of Muslim immigrants do, you should not be allowed to come here. Regardless of how you feel about it, we live in a open-minded, tolerant society, and we do not criminalize or execute homosexuals here. These are just basic things. This is why when Mark Carney says, "Oh, Muslim values are Canadian values," like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? Like, what values are you talking about specifically? He never said it. I think he actually mentioned them. He's like, diversity, tolerance. I'm like, is that Muslim values? Like, I'd like to see evidence of that, but I've yet to see it.
I'm really just bringing that up to kind of trigger you.
Yeah,
I see this stuff all the time. Right now, it's just fun for me to bring that up.
Trigger me.
But,
yeah.
I did not realize that she was literally a government worker. I thought that just by Mark Carney's post that it was just, a representative of a particular Islamic group that is, what's the term I'm looking for? They're, when you have private companies that are trying to get stuff done by the government, there's a word for it. Lobbying. I thought it was just a lobbyist group that she represented. No. She actually is a fucking government worker. Like, she has a real government email address. That right there is not lobbyist. So this blows my fucking mind. Can you imagine? So where's my representative? Where's my Christian representative? I'm not seeing Muslims being arrested for preaching on a small microphone on the side of on the corner somewhere on not in the street, really on the side of the street. I'm only seeing Christians being arrested for doing that. So why do I not have a representative? Why are we not talking about the hundreds of churches that's been burned down, that's been vandalized ever since Trudeau said that there were hundreds of corpses that were found under one of them somewhere in BC, which is bullshit. It's not even true. It's been debunked so many times, yet no apologies, no nothing. And vandalism against Christians has been going on up and up and up and up. And you're telling me that they need a special representative? Like, again, I agree with you. We're secular society. Even as a Christian, I can tell you we're a secular society. So keep it equal for everybody. But keep it equal. If I can't do something as a Christian, that means anybody else shouldn't be able to do that. But that goes for the LGBTQ cult clan too, because it is a fucking religion. I posted about this yesterday, bro. It takes a lot of faith to believe a woman can have a penis. So don't ever make fun of me for believing in God if you believe that that's correct, because you have a lot of faith too, motherfucker.
Well, yeah, and they're entitled to that faith, but again, it is a faith, right? It's a faith. It's a religious belief, and the only way you can do it in a diverse society is treat everybody equally. Period. And like, people on the left are like Carney's like talk about this Islamophobia problem, and it doesn't even occur to him like, oh, do you think maybe that like allowing or giving special status to one religious group, allowing them to do things that other religious groups never could, allowing them to shut down society, to practice their religion in public, which nobody should be allowed to do? You don't think that has anything to do with the backlash? And does that backlash make it Islamophobic? Are people upset with them because they're Muslim, or is it because they're fucking shutting down Bloor Street in the middle of rush hour? Because that's not Islamophobia. When you're there's backlash against people doing obnoxious things, that has nothing to do with their identity. But the identity politics of the left cannot allow for any nuance. There cannot be any explanation for any negative thing done against any person of color or any religion, except for hate, except for bigotry, except for one of the phobias or one of the isms. And it's just why, far left identity politics is partly to blame for the down, the downtrend of Western society. We will take a few comments.
And guys,
here.
keep in mind, I am the Christian. He is the atheist.
I am an atheist, but I have a sense of fairness and justice.
That's all that matters. At the end of the day, that's all that matters to me. Is if I'm not allowed to do something, would I be allowed to go on a temple or fuck it? They don't call it a temple. I apologize. How do they call their mosques? Man, I'm sorry, guys. I'm sick as shit today, so my brain is not working like it normally does. But it would not be acceptable if me and a bunch of my Christian friends would go to a mosque parking lot and start praying, playing loud music. It wouldn't be acceptable. Yet they do it here in Montreal, fucking every weekend.
All the time.
No problem. They do it all over the place. That's my point, right? I know we talk about this all the time, but it is something. Every single time Mark Carney is going to bring that shit up, I'm going to bring it up again because it's fucking bullshit, and nobody fucking voted for this shit either.
No. So Robin, we'll take some comments here. Robin says they can do that in their own country, just keep that crap there, not here. Yeah, completely correct. We don't feel free when religion is ruling our streets, and that's true for any religion. Religion should be practiced in private. That's it. It's not a hard concept to get, and it's not Islamophobic to push back against Muslims who are blocking down public streets so that they can pray. It's just wanting to live in a secular society this is where these are the values that we have here. Sylvie says last December, Legault had talked about banning public prayer in Quebec. Not sure where it's at now. I mean, if you can pray publicly without shutting down streets, like if a Muslim or a Christian is over there in a park under a tree, I don't have a problem with that. But that's not what it's about. That wouldn't be a show of force. That wouldn't be a power move. That wouldn't be a show of dominance. Shutting down streets so you can pray, that's a show of force. That's a show of dominance, and that's exactly what it's about.
I agree, man. It's what's fair is fair. It's all about fairness. We don't. Some groups don't get to have more rights than others. That's my and. I'm not even going to talk about the fact that I don't agree with what they stand for. I don't agree with the way they oppress women. It blows my mind that feminists are okay with this when guess what? Who's losing rights under their regime? It ain't fucking men, bro. It ain't me. Yep. If I was in a Muslim country, I'd be fine. You, on the other hand, would not. Just saying. Although I read an article the other day that's saying that men without a beard are very feminine and they should grow a beard because they might excite Muslim men. I'm like, this has to be satire. This has to be fucking satire.
I think they actually feel that way. That's why they force women to cover up because they say
a man without a beard. Bro, I'm twice your size, little bitch.
Oh yeah, let him try.
I'm talking about Muslim men. Really, I turn you on? Good fucking luck. Good luck, bruh.
Yeah.
We'll see who's the bitch today.
Chris H says, one thing to consider, though, the West is allied to the extremist Arab nations and the West blew up all the secular progressive Arab nations. You'd have to tell me one secular progressive Arab nation. I don't disagree with your first point. Like the West is allied with, say, Saudi Arabia, which definitely has some extremist traits. Although I believe they're slowly trying to minimize those. But what secular progressive Arab nations? I don't. Turkey, maybe. But I mean, the West is allied with Turkey. Turkey's part of NATO. Wise Guy says, Carney's language parrots the rhetoric politicians fed their British and German citizens for the past 10 years. These cities are now rape capitals. It's not a phobia if it's really dangerous. That's right. A lot of it's just pattern recognition. It's undeniable that if you see a chart of rape in many of these European capitals, it is through the fucking roof. And it's this crazy thing from the left where they just can't see cause and effect. You think it's almost like they think that culture comes from the actual land. Culture's from the people. If you have people who grow up in a culture where women are property, where they can be, so let's say a single woman who's walking out late at night can be raped, and it's her fault. Or a woman who commits adultery can be stoned in public, and we see videos on social media of that all the time in many of these countries. Iraq just lowered their marriage age to 9. Right? People say, oh, well, the West is just as bad. No, it's not. There will always be misogynistic people in the West because you can't ever stamp that out. We're talking about what the society accepts, what the culture accepts. In Iraq, you can marry a girl if you're 9 years old and you're a 60-year-old man, and it is culturally acceptable. You see those videos of women being stoned to death because they either cheated on their husband or there's just an accusation. The whole fucking town's involved. There's no taboo. The men are cheering. Their faces aren't covered. They're waving to the camera. It is the culture. The culture is fundamentally different. And you bring large numbers of those people over here, you throw them in Europe, and you're shocked when the rape goes through the fucking roof. Did you think being on the soil of Europe is going to give them European values? It's the dumbest thing in the world. I can't wrap my mind around it. And like you said, the people who are fundamentally demanding that we open our doors to people from with these values are primarily the people who are going to suffer the most if and when a majority of them take over. Chris
it's very
H.
entertaining. You know how entertaining it is.
Just getting triggered.
Oh, bro, I don't even need to participate. I'm a conservative.
Well,
my leaning are way worse than yours. But it is fucking hilarious to hear you blow your gasket.
Well, the topics that trigger. The topics that trigger me.
Of course, I do it on purpose. I do it on purpose, bro. I love your feeling.
Chris H. Another thing to consider: the Canadian right wing depends on Muslims to fight against transgenderism. I don't know about that. There's a ton of people who are not right wing. There's a ton of people on the left. The thing that's got me to open my eyes against the harms of transgenderism was gay people on Twitter, homosexuals on Twitter, who were saying, no, this is a real problem. Thank God I wasn't born 10 years later, or the fact that I'm just a feminine gay boy, they would convince me that I was a girl. It's There's a lot of people who don't believe male rapists should be placed in prison. That doesn't make you right wing. There's a lot of people who don't think male-bodied people should be competing in women's sports. That doesn't make you right wing. I actually think a lot of left, I am a liberal, and I've got a 45,000 person following on X, and the vast majority of them are liberals who are opposed strongly to transgenderism because it is misogynistic and homophobic as an ideology. It should be the left leading the charge against transgenderism, not pushing it. It's wild to me how we've allowed ourselves to take this ideology, which basically makes the claim that all a woman is an idea in a man's head, and any man who claims to be a woman should be given unquestioned access to the spaces that we've set aside for women, is just misogynistic to its core. And I don't know how the left came to champion this.
But hold on, but this is not what he's talking about. He's talking about, I'm sorry, Chris H, maybe I'm reading your comment wrong, because it makes absolutely zero sense. Another thing to consider, the Canadian right wing dependent on Muslims to fight against the transgenderism, but they don't. They don't have any problem. No. The reason they are here is because the left is pushing it, and they're using their tolerance in order to do whatever the fuck they want, like blocking streets whenever the fuck they want. The Muslims are not aligned with the right at all. On the contrary, it's guys like me that I talk against both transgenderism and the Muslim agenda in Canada based on what we're seeing in fucking Europe. So no. There are no way. The fact that Muslims are not saying anything against transgenderism and even letting queers for Palestine is because they know that it works in their favor.
Within their communities, they won't put up with it. They would never put up with it within their communities.
You know what? Hold on. Let me
they're happy.
Something real fast. Let me play something real fast. It's like a minute and a half. But this is, we wanted to show this video the other day. We just didn't bring it up. And since we have 3 minutes left, we're definitely not going into another subject. But here is a video that every single Canadian should see. This one, not because I made it, but the video that's in there, not my video per se, but you guys, sorry. There we go. Boop.
Go ahead.
Or it's too late. Remember when Mark Carney said this?
These are Muslim values. These are Canadian values.
If you believe that this is true, you might want to listen to this guy.
I'm a political refugee from Iran. I've been to prison. I've been under Islamic law. I know how it starts and I know how it ends. And it always starts with the unity of left and Islamists. I came here to be free. I chose Canada as my second home to live in a free country. And I'm beginning to get really scared because the way things are going, it looks like they're going to basically appease Islamists just to not raise any ruckus or something, step by step, and they're not going to stop. They see it as a sign of weakness, so they're going to take more and more. And I'm against that. I believe Canada should be free, and freedom of speech is something that nobody can take.
Look at what's happening all over.
So the point is, I wanted to show that guy. So that's an old video. It's like from the early 2000s. You can see just by the graininess of it. But this is an Iranian that had to live under Islamic rule, and the images that were added, I added them, and that's why you see a passport on the left of just a regular looking woman, and then whoop, you can see the comparison right away of what it looked like prior and after. So the point is, they're not affiliating with right wing. Absolutely fucking not. It's only the right wings like me that are fucking talking against this and like, hey guys, you need to fucking pay attention. It's the left with their fucking tolerance and idiocy that says, oh no, we need to accept the way that they are. But fuck, like they don't realize that queer for Palestine is like chickens for KFC.
Yeah,
it's the same fucking thing, right?
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, and if you want a like a historical example, just look at Lebanon, which was a majority Christian country, and they allowed a small minority of Muslims. And when they were a small minority, it was all about diversity and tolerance. As soon as they became a majority, the flip switched, and they essentially tried to murder as many Christians as they could. A giant civil war happened, and they won. And that is that's where they are. But it definitely happens. We're going to end the show here in a second. Just take one or two questions here. Anvil Hammer says, practice in private. That make a good slogan about practice religion. Couldn't agree more. That's a great comment. And she says, the West is allied to oil. And on that, we can absolutely agree. That is
when
where
we should be allied with Alberta.
Allied with the oil in Alberta and not the oil in Saudi Arabia. I like that.
That's another great slogan right there.
Yeah. Tammy, the problem with the left is they get their brain into a pretzel to justify that if one white dude rapes a chick, then we can't be upset when masses of Muslims come here and do it, especially if the difference is like you can't judge by what individuals do. What you judge is how society treats it. How there is no scenario where a man can rape a woman here and there'll be proof of it. Like, yeah, sometimes there won't be evidence, and we can discuss on if the courts are required too much proof or whatnot. We're not going down that rabbit hole. The point is, in many of these countries, if it's a different, in certain scenarios, it's completely fine. In Iran, I saw, there are young women who are executed because they get raped, and when they go to report it, if the rapist is married, they can get charged with adultery. So I mean, like that's the culture, that's the society. We don't have that society. And the idea that because white people still rape women, which is undoubtedly true, makes no difference about bringing in tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people from a culture where it's completely acceptable is an utterly nonsense argument. And we'll take this final comment here. Joe says, this is why I contend that the trans cult is a Trojan horse brought in to destroy the left's organized resistance to fascism. I don't think that's there's nothing about that strikes me as crazy, Joe. Nothing at all. Guys, and I'll take Misfit just because I didn't see Misfit. I was actually literally just thinking, remember we mentioned Misfit when we were talking about the North American. Yeah, well, we were talking about the North American Union, and you were like, oh yeah, Misfit. And I was thinking, it was like, oh fuck, I haven't seen Misfit for a while. Well, here he is. He says, why don't the queers go to guys that are protest there? We all know why, and they know why.
I had posted about that last year. Did you know that there was an organization that offered $1 million to any organization that was a privately funded organization that put videos out there saying we will provide $1 million to anybody, any group that wants to go to Gaza and organize an LGBTQ pride parade? No problem. We will fund it for you. You know how many people answered? That's how many.
Everybody knows. That's why it's so like everybody knows, right? Everybody knows. They know, we know, they know, we know, they know. It's just all fucking theater. All right, guys, we're gonna put a pin there because we're a couple minutes over. Jason came in too late, brother. He says, I came in late on this. Robin on fire. Jason, you gotta come in earlier. Brother. We miss you.
God damn, you're so gay today.
Oh, give it up.
I miss Jason.
Oh, stop it. Just because you're full of hate and you hate everybody.
That's right. Joe and I, we hate everybody equally.
And both says to atheist protests. I guess you're looking at it.
Atheist protests in the same way as our anarchists are organized.
How do you feel like there's a dig in there, but I don't know. I don't see it.
Atheists don't protest. It's just
I gotcha.
People have different religion, right?
Yes. We live and let live.
Is a cult that
we live and let live. But if one group starts encroaching on that, then we start pushing back, or at least I do. Robbie does look like a knob gobbler. Brother, you should.
He does, and he's quite good at it. I got a feeling.
I just want to look like a knob gobbler. I don't.
Oh, you know what? I will admit,
I reject.
I fucking miss this, Misfit. Yeah. I missed you too, bro.
Yeah. I reject the notion. I reject it entirely. Guys, we're gonna.
I reject the notion. Okay, I reject it.
Hey. Guys, we're gonna put a pin in there. Man, you guys are fucked up. Like a guy can't be friendly without being a knob gobbler. This is why none of you guys have a
Can't be
friend.
friendly.
Yeah,
Can't
that's why
be
you don't have
friendly.
friends.
I'm
Yeah.
very friendly on the weekends.
Yes. Guys, we are going to put a pin there now. I've been saying this for like 5 minutes. Hopefully, you guys had a good show today. We had a lot of audience engagement. You could have been anywhere in the world today and you chose to be here with us, and we will always appreciate that. Fuck, what does it say? It's Tuesday, isn't it? Monday? I don't even know.
I'm so confused. It's Tuesday, I think.
We're back tomorrow, regular Wednesday show at noon Eastern. Make sure you tune in. If you did see the show today and you're a new viewer, best way you can support us is by liking and sharing this stream. Subscribe to the channel, and if you really want to support us and support independent media, you can become a member for the low price of $2.99 per month. That will allow you to support the show and also help build the community here. Other than that, guys, take care of yourselves. We will see you tomorrow at noon.